welcome back to Gopher's Workshop. I'm your host, Aaron, and joining me as always is my fellow hosts, Chris.
It's me.
And Sky.
I'm here.
You ever notice how Sky gets the more enthusiastic voice?
Where do I get it from?
No. I give him
as positive as I could.
I give him the more enthusiastic voice. I give you the low. Try to make it sexy. Anyway,
I was starting off on a high note. It's as high as I'm getting for this whole thing, but I started there. I made sure we got it.
Right. So yeah, speaking of high notes, so this is the episode that we're going to do where we compare how great Blood Angels are to Space Wolves, right?
I don't want to talk about it. Episode's over. I'm done.
Aren't they just like the same but opposite colors?
No, we're better in every way.
I'm gonna have to.
I'm really struggling to admit to things, but also you might be right.
Today is Space Wolves Day, the day that Chris has anticipated for a whole long time. Boy, howdy, is it? You know what, Chris? I'm gonna let you tell you. You take it from here.
Hold on, I'm digging out of my hole. Anyway, so we'll start by going off some overview things. Moving from Index to Codex, which is already a confusion. All right. We are still on Index at this time. By the time you're hearing this, the official Codex is not released. Matter of fact, if you look at the most recent points updates, you will see both points updates for Index, which is to say there was none, and there are points on that MFM for the Codex. All they're really doing is saying, if you have the Codex in hand, the few of you that do, and you want to play them, here are the known points updates that they plan on doing to make the Codex feel a little more balanced. They are not actually saying the Codex is legal in any way. Okay. Specifically, they call out, you should be using Index until the official Codex release. This Codex should not be played in tournaments. This Codex should not be it's just for fun. Okay. We are still technically on Index. So moving past that, now that we know that we are technically not legal, but also looking into the future that is this Codex partial release. We went from 35 or 37 Index data sheets where we lost 19. That's
wow.
Half. Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Gained 4. Hey. Gained 4. This is to say we lost some options. Not a small number, a lot of them, but we lost options. Okay. But we're Marines, right? That's the argument. We have access to the whole Space Marine Codex-ish. We're supposed to be okay. Okay. The Army rule is basically Wolfen units have the opportunity to gain OC. They are basically Death Company of a new variety. This is why another reason why we keep making comparisons to Blood Angels.
100%.
Now we get to the bad parts.
That wasn't it?
No. It's fine. Internal screaming. We lost all external support. The short answer here is GW told you this was a Codex supplement, as in it supplemented the Space Marine Codex. This is a lie. This is a standalone Codex. You get to ally in, air quotes, ally in regular Marine stuff. Okay. You still get to technically take everything out of the regular Marines. However, every opportunity to give you a restriction, they have given it to you. Okay. There is no generic character. There's no captain, no librarian, no lieutenant, no nothing that gets to go into a Space Wolf unit. There's no Space Wolf unit that is allowed to take any generic character. Okay. The Space Wolf specific characters that are in here are not allowed to go into any generic unit. Ragnar is not allowed to go into Assault Intercessors. Logan Grimnar the Terminator is not allowed to go in Terminator units. He can go into Space Wolf Terminator unit, but only that one. Okay. We have a Power Armored Librarian that's allowed to go into these Space Wolf Power Armored units. Hooray! Only the named one is allowed to go in them. A regular librarian, an arguably identical thing without the epic character keyword, is not allowed to join them. So, this is to say we are a standalone codex that happens to get to ally in regular Marine stuff. Furthermore, when we get to the detachments, it turns out basically every detachment rule, with one exception, is in reference to Space Wolf units or Space Wolf characters. So if you ally in, air quotes, all of these generic Astartes units, they will gain little to no benefit. So now that we've moved past that, we're this standalone codex. Well, it turns out losing 19 data sheets means we lost 51% of our total codex.
Fuck. It's fine.
A great time.
You're totally fine.
The reality is you get to... Okay, so I'm saying we're standalone codex that gets to ally in Marines. The opposite is also arguably true. For a bunch of restrictions, because you're taking Marines, like you lose the +1 to wound on oath, etc. There's an argument to you can play the generic detachments and you can play generic Marine stuff and then ally in Space Wolves units. This is very reasonable to do because at least now your whole army is gaining the detachment benefit. That's better. But if we start looking at some other factions that are in a similar boat to us, similar being a very loose term. So like Blood Angels, they've got access to 4 detachments, right? If we include the Grotmus one.
Yep.
And every opportunity that they had access to, say, Blood Angels, like unit or Blood Angels character versus Astartes, they used Astartes every time. They have 0 Blood Angels unit restrictions. Now, I'm not including when it says like the stratagem targets a sanguinary guard. Okay, that's specific to a unit. That's not reasonably, they could not have said Astartes there. But there are 0 enhancements across all the detachments, 0 stratagems across all the detachments where they restricted it to Blood Angels unit. Looking at Dark Angels, again, 4 detachments. While there are some, this is a little grayer because there are some detachments that are very Deathwing focused, right? But they've always had that. But there are no times where they could have said Dark Angels and instead chose that over Astartes. They always chose Astartes. So again, 0 enhancement, 0 strats. Looking at Space Wolves, I'm only going to do the 3 detachments. I'm cheesing it a little bit here, I'll admit this. But looking at the 3 detachments that are in the Codex, not the Grotmus detachment. Of the 12 enhancements available to us, 6 of them are very specific to only Space Wolf characters. Half cannot be put on a generic character, despite us being a supplement of Space Marines. Going to stratagems, out of the 15 stratagems that could say Astartes, 7 of them chose to say Space Wolves only. That is to say 8 of them still say Astartes. So that means GW knew what they were doing. This was not a, oh, this is a mix-up. This is absolutely intended. Okay. Half of our stratagems that could be a Space Marine unit instead are restricted to only Space Wolf units because how dare you give a benefit to Blade Guard, or how dare you give a benefit to regular intercessors? It's pretty great. So, going on to all of the data sheets. Of the many data sheets that we still have left, we're not looking great. we have a bunch of data sheets, and if we put it into the perspective of your standalone codex, we accept all of these restrictions they've happened. We don't get to complain about them anymore. Some of the data sheets are arguably reasonable, but they're only reasonable in that perspective. If we pretended all these restrictions said Astartes, which I pray to all that is Russ, I hope they FAQ this and fix this and remove a bunch of these unnecessary restrictions, or else we are going to become the fluff faction. I don't know what else to call it. We're going to be the fun guys. We're not going to be competitive in any way. But of these, before we go into individual data sheets, again, we'll do some overview stuff. The overview is, of the many data sheets, I would argue two data sheets got better than their index. Only two.
That's ridiculous.
You can argue up to 5. Like, I really tried to push it, and I was like, no, but if I really wanted to argue it, you could say up to 5. But most of those arguments, again, are, well, because of these restrictions, you gain access to Ragnar. Well, that makes that unit better. Okay, fair. But it's in reality, it's 2. Of units that I would argue are neutral, they had some changes, but they're not better, they're not worse, they're just different, totally acceptable. We're looking at only 6. If I really try to push it for the benefit of the doubt, I'll say 8.
God.
Loving this. As far as objectively worse, unarguable worse data sheets than the index, 10 of them got nerfed. Now, for those of you that at home doing some math here, I said 10, I said 6, I said 2. We're at 18 data sheets. That means that I clearly did not include certain data sheets here because I think they're on the line. They're arguable whether or not they're neutral or bad in comparison. You got me. I really tried not to include the head takers in any of these, because how do you say better, neutral, or worse if it's a wholly brand new data sheet? Okay, so head takers are not anywhere in here. If you want to say, nope, we got 3 better because, man, head takers are so cool. All right, fair. You got me. Absolutely. But looking at data sheets that we had in index that we were allowed to keep, a lot of them got restrictions. And I'm not just saying the fact that the number of characters that are allowed in Blood Claws went from, I don't know, we're Space Marines, 15 down to 2. It's not great. And to be fair, I'm exaggerating there. It's not 2. We have 4 characters that can go in there. But that's still the reality of where we're at. Same goes for Wolfguard Terminators. It turns out we had Space Wolf Terminators. That sounds pretty cool. Well, you know how many Terminator characters are allowed in there? You get 1. Right? You still get Logan Grimnar, but all your generic Terminator characters, you no longer get a chaplain. You no longer get a librarian. You no longer get... You don't get any of them. You want a regular captain in Terminator armor so that you can do some CP stuff? None of that. So while I would argue we are always the most flavorful Space Marines, right? It doesn't mean we're the most competitive, but also our detachments are so on flavor, and we have all these cool little trinkets on our models that make us look unique and fun. I'm not saying we don't have that, but also as far as the rule book is concerned, our codex, we lost a lot of it. Not just because we lost data sheets, but because we're so restrictive. No, it turns out rune priests, and I'm going to lose my mind on this one. If you look at the new Terminator Librarian and you look at the old metal rune priest model, I have never seen a more direct comparison like the runes that are etched into the generic Terminator model, when I saw previews of him, I would have said up and down, that is a rune priest. That is a Space Wolf model. I'm not mad that they made him generic. I'm fine with it, right? But what's the reality of our situation right now? The model in all of generic Space Marine Codex that looks so objectively like a Space Wolf's models, I would have argued it was a Space Wolf model, cannot join a single Space Wolf unit. Crazy.
I think they cooked a little too much on this one.
I feel like they're punishing you.
I don't know what we're being punished for, because again, we're going to stay on overview stuff right now. But the reality is, if we're talking about Index was too powerful, we were being too competitive in Index. The only thing that arguably was really competitive in Index was what was called Wolf Prison, which is to say you spam 4-up invol and you just prison them in their own deployment zone because you're fast. And then you just live too long. It's not that you dealt enough damage to win outright. It's not that you were ever scary per se. It's just that we didn't die long enough that we could outscore our opponents because they weren't allowed to stand on circles. In this new codex, I would argue our damage output got reduced further. We didn't have good damage output to begin with. It's not that it was bad. We had access to a bunch of generic Marine stuff, and that's pretty decent, right? But also, as far as Space Wolf units were concerned, we weren't that good. Our Thunder Cav, with a bunch of character support, 100% of which we lost, by the way. There's not a single character that can go in there to modify their damage output. So their damage output is already nerfed by losing those data sheets by an almost infinite amount. And then the basic data sheet also has reduced damage output. The standalone data sheet, dealing less damage. First off, Wolf Prison, I'm going to argue, is already dead. The minute this codex becomes official, it's already dead. And that's on top of, if you look at the points updates for this codex that they put in the MFM just recently, they made the 6 bricks even more expensive because they do not want this to happen again. And you know what? I'm absolutely going to say right now, I'm not that upset about this, right? Like, it felt uninteractive to play. It felt kind of unfair because I was literally preventing my opponent from scoring. And I said, they're not leaving their deployment zone unless they spam fly keyword. And it didn't feel interactive. It didn't feel like a balanced game. I am accepting that they're nerfing that into the ground, but also, how do you do that and still make me playable? Well, you could make me more like Blood Angels. You could give me a bunch of Alpha Strike damage output and reduce my durability. You could increase my points so I get even less models and make me more Custodes-like. But the only way you do that is by, again, increasing my damage output and having me allowing me less models, because you're saying, nope, your points are going up because the increased damage output. There's a bunch of ways you could make me still playable and have a totally different play style. And when we're talking about Custodes, when we're talking about World Eaters, absolutely, they've shown they're willing to change a faction's play style, even if that upsets the player base. Because we absolutely heard from Custodes player when they got their codex, right? Of we're ruined and we're nothing like we used to be and this is awful. And then they just made them sit on the codex and they forced them to play it anyway. And they're like, you know what? We do still have options. It's very different, but we still have options. I am not seeing it here. Where's our options? I see exactly 2 options in this whole codex. And it turns out, if you're in Europe, this doesn't look so bad. If you're a non-American, you absolutely get to play Horde. You get to play MSU. And if you don't actually care about dealing any damage, you just care about having more units across the field, maybe it exists in here. And I'm not even saying it's good, right? I would still argue you could play generic Marines, or you want to play Horde? Why not just play Orcs, right? In the European meta, they do way better. In the American meta, I don't know what it is we're going to do. I know this is a bunch of like poo-pooing on a bunch of stuff, right? And it's not just, oh, I wish I had the moon. I am very reasonable about like fair and balanced. I don't need to have everything. I am glad that we are losing Wolf Prison, not just because it was on top for too long, because I don't know that it was, but it's because like, no, that's not fair to my opponents. Them not getting to play the game is not good for player retention. It's not good for people being excited to play games with me. I'm okay getting reasonable nerfs. The fact that Thundercav are, holy cow, in a terrible place. I'm willing to accept this. Thundercav and Wolfen, they ebb and flow as far as what's playable and what's not across the editions. I'm fine with this. The fact that, I guess we'll go with Grey Hunters. Grey Hunters are probably the easiest example of why would you ever play a Grey Hunter when you have access to regular intercessors? Okay, so we'll go down some bullet points. Grey Hunters have more OC than regular intercessors, and you're going to find that this whole codex is about having out OCing your opponent. Okay, and again, European meta, this sounds awesome. American meta, I don't know how to care. But also, so Grey Hunters have more OC than regular intercessors, but that comes at a cost. First off, every model is more expensive. And then you're obligated to take a 10-man brick. You are not allowed to take a 5-man brick to sit on your home objective. It's not allowed. So they're more expensive per model. You're obligated to have it being an expensive unit because you have to take 10. And then for this extra cost, the only thing you are getting is more OC. You objectively have less damage output. You don't get the double shots. Regular intercessors were considered so bad that GW had to go out of their way to give them a second rule in order to increase their damage output to make them playable, right? Sticky objective wasn't enough. Nobody was really doing it except for in Europe. And they said, no, we'll give you double the shots if you shoot at the same target, right? Well, what did Grey Hunters get? They get to reroll to wound, specifically reroll ones and then full rerolls if they're on the objective. That sounds decent. But would you really take reroll to wound, even if you said it was reroll to wound all the time? Would you take that for losing half of your dice?
No.
Okay, maybe if they're the same number of points, right? But it turns out they're not. They're more expensive for that. Mm-hmm. And then they're not even the same gun. It turns out Grey Hunters, I should say, get carbines. What's the difference? Well, they're AP 0. So now you've lost an AP, you've lost half of your dice, and in response, you're given probably reroll ones to wound, but let's say full rerolls to wound. I don't know that this is worth it. And that's again, on top of the fact, obligated to 10 models, obligated to a higher cost per model. Why am I ever going to take intercessors? Well, there has to be character support that justifies it, right? Well, it turns out the only character support are Space Wolf models, not the generic models. So you can't put a librarian in there to make the 10 brick more survivable, to like give them the invol or anything. You get Space Wolf characters only, and it turns out of them, arguably only one of them actually supports them in any way, and he's still better at supporting the Blood Claws. So why would you put him in there? Crazy.
So, okay, when you say supportive character, Space Wolf only, is it like the Death Company restriction? Like it says specifically only Death? Oh my God.
Yes. So you're a Death Company guy that can only go with Death Company. Well, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What if the Sanguinary Guard, they could only take Dante, or they could take a Death Company captain? But like those are the only models that Sanguinary Guard could take. Your generic captain, yes, it makes sense he could join, but he's not allowed. Your generic chaplain with jump, nope, can't take him either.
See, so many restrictions.
That's like an extreme example, right?
Yep.
Now, what if your death company guys, your regular death company on foot, they're restricted, right? Okay, fair. But that's because they're death company, right? Well, I have Wolfen, which are my death company. The fact that Wolfen are restricted, I'm not arguing about. That makes a lot of sense, man. Both on theme, on whatever, that all makes sense. But now, Blood Angels, you've got, I don't know, a Ballpred, right? Mm-hmm. What if the Ballpred could only be healed by a Blood Angel specific tech priest? I'm making abstract arguments here, right? But this is basically what they did. We do have an Iron Priest. He still affects vehicles arguably all the same. Okay, so this is not a direct example, but this is the idea they took with every part of our codex. Our characters, our basic units, our detachments, our stratagems, our enhancements. In almost every case where they could make it available to all your units, they said, nope, only to Death Company.
Oh my God. This is ridiculous. Is there any bright side to this codex? Or is there just more bad?
Okay, so there are a couple of arguable bright sides.
Okay. All right.
First off, I'm still going to depress you with these, but they exist. So the first one is we have gained access as Marine faction to a 40-point unit.
Okay. That's not bad.
Should be. So our 40-point unit is Fenrisian Wolves. Okay. For 40 points, you get 5 models. Technically has 0 OC.
Okay.
So they don't really get to sit on your home field, your home objective, or, whatever. But they have an ability that if you have a supporting unit, now they gain OC. Again, kind of like Death Company.
Yeah.
Okay? So, in theory, for 40 points, you can treat them like Grots. The problem is you have to have another unit close enough to them in order to give them OC so that they're actually acting like Grots.
And it has to be a Space Wolf unit, correct?
So, yes, is the short answer. It has to be a character or a wolf priest. And depending on which, you get to change the range. It's 6 or 12. Yes. So you have to not just have a unit. You're right. You have to have a character.
And it has to be a Space Wolf character.
Step. Yes, Space Wolf specifically. So if you have you got Lone Op Lieutenant.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
He doesn't do anything.
Yep.
Hey, you took your jump chaplain and assault intercessors and jump pack over there. Nope, don't care. That's not a Space Wolf character. Yes, it's a Marine character in a Space Wolf list that is arguably Space Wolf in everything but keyword. Turns out, gives no benefit. This is one of the 2 data sheets that got objectively better from Index because they were OC0 and that was the only answer. Now they're OC0 with a chance to gain OC. This is one of the 2 that got better. And this is still objectively worse than Grots in every way.
It's sounding more and more like they're pushing a spam list.
You're right. And again, if you're in the European meta, you could take 20 bricks of Blood Claws and absolutely hoard it up as a reasonably tough Marine in a meta where everyone's running infantry-based guns. Okay, well, that sounds pretty solid. You want to run MSU? You could run a ton, absolute bucket of units because you gain access to like 40-point units and this and that. And again, European meta, this makes a lot of sense. In the American meta, where you have to bring enough tank busting to deal with 3 dreadnoughts in a list or more, what tank busting am I taking? Because it turns out whatever tank busting I'm taking, if it's not one of my specific dreadnoughts, it turns out I cannot give it any sort of benefit.
Wow.
Now, there's a minor exception here, which I absolutely hate. It's in a detachment. We'll talk about that after the break. Also, after the break, we'll go over into some of the specific data sheets, my best units and worst units, in my opinion. But I've been ranting for a while, so let's take a little break and get on a slightly more positive note before we get back to finishing off this codex.
All right, let's go on over to our mid-break. Well, here we are, middle of the episode. Guess what we have to do first?
Patrons.
Patrons! So, we have to thank our guardsman patron, Matt.
Sergeant Matt.
Sorry, yes, you're right. Sergeant Matt. We got to thank Sergeant Matt.
Put some respect on that guardsman's name. He's only going to live for another 12 hours, but you gotta
put some respect on it. And then we have to thank our White Shield Guardsman patrons, Mitch and Nicodemus. So thank you to our patrons. Without you, we'd have a difficult time doing this. We'd still do it, but you help support us. You're the best.
You guys are the best.
So thank you to our patrons. Thank you to our listeners, because you also help this show go. We love you all. But with that being said, mid-break news.
So this is where we're going to admit that we're pre-recording this a little bit. We've got a move coming up. So as far as news is concerned, we are still waiting on Chaos Knights. I am fairly certain I am objectively certain they are going up for pre-order this weekend, which means by the time you're listening to it, it went up last Saturday. But yeah, there's lots of stuff coming, and we got you for whatever you need. You can go to our website, 15% off all GW products, including the pre-orders. Feel free to check us out. Anything you are looking for that you don't see, shoot us an email. We will try to get it for you. We should be able to get almost everything for you as long as you see it on their website. The exception being mission decks. We have no idea when they'll come back, but we're here to help get you some savings too.
Yeah. So go to gophermafia.com to get your stuff. Sky, you got anything you want to add?
I hope you like having 7 war dogs in one box.
A lot of war dogs.
It's like a pack lunch, but it's just 7 Jell-O cups, nothing else.
Now, we did the math the other day. This is actually like good information. The 7 war dog bundle, we'll call it, is 3.5 boxes of war dogs because they come in pairs. Turns out, doing the math, you're basically getting 2 of the war dogs for free, almost 2. It's like 1 and most of 1.
That's not bad, though.
Pretty decent.
On that note, let's get out of the middle part. Let's get more back into the hopefully better side of Space Wolves.
I'll do my best.
All right, let's head to the last part of our episode. Okay, Chris, we've shitted all over Space Wolves. Tell me it gets good from here.
All right, we got the only way out is to dig deeper.
Oh, no.
You know how hard it is to build a ladder out of wolves to dig out of a hole?
We're stacking up bodies because we're dead, Jim. GW wanted us gone, and we're almost there.
They did it. They did the thing.
So I do have good parts to say about this, and I will find them, I promise. But I think we should start with detachments, because detachments are where usually it influences how you view a lot of the data sheets. So we got 3 detachments. First off, because GW wanted it this way, we're going to start with the absolute joke and meme that may or may not be a middle finger to us. They gave us Saga of the Hunter. This is the Dogpile Detachment. That's not the name of the rule, but also that's exactly what the rule is. You're supposed to dogpile things. Each time a Space Wolf unit, Space Wolf specifically, not generic Astartes, makes a melee attack that targets an enemy unit, if that enemy unit is within engagement range of another Adeptus Astartes unit from your army, then the attacking unit, specifically the Space Wolf one, can gain add 1 to hit. If you've completed the saga, you also get add 1 to wound. Now, the way all of these detachments work, there's a saga, which means you either don't get a detachment rule at all, or you only get half of a detachment rule. And then after you do this thing during the game, which is an amount of real work, you gain additional benefit. This is very on theme. I don't have a problem with sagas. Okay. But the reality is most of the game, you're going to be getting add 1 to hit. Only on Space Wolf units, only in melee, and only if there's an additional unit also engaging them. This is the dogpile detachment that GW says they gave us, but also is pretty awful. Because even after you have multiple units in there, again, if they aren't both Space Wolf units, only the one Space Wolf unit is going to gain any benefit. If you ally in, air quotes, any generic Astartes units, like some Blade Guard with a Judy, it turns out they gain no benefit. They could not possibly gain a benefit. It's awful.
So, okay. We're doing a lot of comparisons to Blood Angels. We're going to do some comparison to Orcs too, but they did a Death Company detachment for us that wasn't too great. Right? It's not bad, but it's not really the competitive choice.
Sure. And I would argue this isn't even our Death Company one. We'll get to one that kind of is a little more geared towards Wolf and stuff in a minute. But like, this is more restrictive than the Death Company one, which is not that playable. They're trying to make it more playable by reducing their points and stuff like that. It's still less playable and also more restrictive.
And see, this is the worst part, right? Like, arguably the Death Company detachment was kind of our Mimi detachment. Everybody's really angry and you're just gonna go kill shit. You're out of control. Okay, it sounds like they gave you 2 of those, and one of them's more Mimi than the other.
It's pretty great.
I don't like it. Okay, what's the next one?
So the next one is complicated, but also I'm gonna argue one of our best ones. Okay, Saga of the Bold. Each time an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight, you can apply one of the following abilities. If your saga is complete, that's a big ask. You can re-roll 1 hit, 1 wound, and 1 damage roll. Okay, decent. If your saga is not complete, then a unit with a Space Wolf character, specifically Space Wolf character unit, you can re-roll a single hit or wound or damage, not and. So it's not even Space Wolf units at this point. It's Space Wolf units that also have a character. And then it's a single die re-roll for the whole thing. Okay, well, at that point, that must mean that the saga is really easy to complete, right? Because this seems kind of not very good until after you complete the saga. Well, basically, you have to complete 3 or more boasts. How do you get boasts? You have to destroy one of your Oath of the Moment targets, which is to say, that's pretty easy, but also once per battle round, which means if this is the only thing you do, it won't be. If this is the only thing you do, you don't even get your detachment rule, arguably, until after the middle of 3rd battle round. That sucks. What else do we got? The unit that destroys the Oath target destroys a second Oath of the Moment target during this battle. So if the last wound on the Oath of the Moment target comes from the same unit in 2 different battle rounds, you get a bonus Oath of the a bonus oath boast, excuse me. So now you have the opportunity to complete your saga on battle round 2. at earliest. Well, this sounds kind of decent. It's better, right? But we're talking about stars align, right? You have to choose an oath that you know this model is going to be able to deal with. Depending on how tough those targets are, you have to make sure that not only that unit lives through your opponent's turn so that it's able to kill a second target, but like it has to be the one dealing the last wound to the unit both times. If it just deals damage and, oh, I missed it by 1, there's one guy left, and then someone else finishes it off, you don't get the bonus then. Okay, there are more options here. Hold the line for the second battle round on. So you're not even allowed to do this the first battle round. At the end of your command phase, that unit is in range of an objective marker that is not within your deployment zone. So holding a no man's land objective marker, you get a boast. Okay, now this is absolutely like arguably easy. The fact that you can't do it on turn 1 means you are definitely not getting your like saga completed any faster. But at least this is an easy, I kill like battle round 1, I get lucky and I'm able to kill an oath target. Which again, if I'm going first is a big ask. But if I'm going second, pretty reasonable. And then battle round 2, I'm standing on an objective marker. And my opponent didn't kill me. All right. And I get a boast. That seems reasonable. I could probably do that. It's up to my opponent, not me, but I could do it. And then I kill a second Oath of the Moment target. I don't care with who. Now I've completed my saga. Okay, this sounds pretty reasonable. But again, you are not getting your detachment roll, arguably, until middle of second battle round. That's pretty rough. And again, this is, I'm going to argue, the best detachment we have. There's one last one that says, at the end of either player's turn, that unit is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. Okay. Now, the biggest restriction on all of these, I would like to remind you, is that it's not just any unit destroying the Oath of the Moment target. It's not just any unit in your opponent's deployment zone, and it's not any unit on an objective marker. It is a Space Wolf character unit.
I'm audibly frustrated for you.
You're right. And the only generic character we have is the Wolf Priest, which means if you want to spam characters in order to be able to arguably do this, your options are a bunch of epic characters, a Wolf Priest, and then Iron Priest, I guess. I guess if you trust your Tech Marine to run around and slay Oath of the Moment targets.
He's just out there with his little axe. Yeah!
Okay, so you'll enjoy this. Our Iron Priest has a hammer instead of an axe. Pretty decent. But we lost the ability that every Tech Marine has that gives us bonus attacks when a vehicle dies. So we have a hammer, but we'll always have less attacks than the axe guy.
That's so stupid.
It's fine. I don't actually mind that part. We're known for hammers. I accept this. So this is our best detachment. It's pretty great. Definitely not restrictive in any way.
This is the best. I don't like it.
Saga of the Beast Slayer. This is the one that arguably has a lot of Death Company, Wolfen-based things. So our enhancements are Wolfen-based. Stratagems have a lot of Wolfen-based stuff. Anyway, moving on. The rule for this, which again sounds reasonable, is each time an Adeptus Astartes unit from your army, well, we're starting off pretty good, targets a character, monster, or vehicle. Okay. If your saga is completed, you gain lethal hits.
So now we're back to the restrictive. We have to complete the saga with a wolf, I'm a bet.
Not exactly. So,
okay.
You gain lethal hits against those, and then if the saga is complete, you gain lethal hits all the time. Okay, so again, not unreasonable, but lethal hits is arguably not that impressive. but I'm glad I have it. So now I'm getting lethal hits against only character units, monster units, or vehicles. I got to complete the saga to get lethal hits against the infantry and other stuff. How do I complete the saga? At the start of the game, I determine how many units my opponent has that are character units, monster units, or vehicle units. I have to kill outright half of those units. Once I've killed half of their vehicle, monster, and character units, now I gain lethal hits against the other stuff. And it's only lethals. It's not crits on 5 lethals. It's not lethals and sustained. It's just lethals. That's it. I think, and from what I've seen on the internet, this is also true. Internet being Reddit and such. Most people are gravitating towards this one, and they think it's the best, which I totally understand why, is because you gain real benefits on turn 1, lethal hits against the 3 keywords, and it applies to all Astartes things, not just Space Wolves. I hear you. This is probably the easiest one to play. It is the most reasonable one to play because it's the least restrictive. This should probably be the best one. It still feels bad that I'm taking a bunch of, again, like my enhancements to this actually applies to all Astartes things. Most of the enhancements are referring to, but it only affects Wolfen units or Thundercav units. And again, we talked about how they're really hating on Thundercav units because we lost all our character support and they're becoming expensive because they're afraid of Wolf Prison. And like, okay, so my enhancements aren't really that takeable, and my strats are also half of them are referring to only Space Wolf units. So I'm glad that I'm allowed to take non-Space Wolf units and gain some detachment benefit, but I'm not really allowed to target them that often with stratagems. So that also sucks. Again, crazy restrictive. And this is the least restrictive one. Hate it.
They just punished you for being you.
You're right. And I joke you not. That is legitimate. Like, we have more, again, there are so many things comparable exactly to Blood Angels. And Blood Angels have exactly 0 of these restrictions. 0. Like, I have Wolfen, you have Death Company. All right, cool. It turns out they even updated your Death Company gain leadership ability to be exactly mine because mine was slightly different and arguably slightly better than your old rule. But the difference is so minor that I would argue is insignificant. And even then, they still updated your rules so that you had the same as me.
Yep.
So now we are even more comparable. And you still have 0 of the restrictions that I have.
There is only one detachment that even comes close to the restrictions that you have, and is the Grotmus detachment, where I have to have leaders and units to actually get benefits from the army-wide rule.
I have a detachment that's built around characters, and you know what? That sounds pretty reasonable. But all of my characters have to be Space Wolf specific. Yours were just characters.
Yep. That's why I say that's the only one that even comes close to this level of restriction you're getting. And even then, I'd argue it's so far away that you might as well be in another state.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
All right. So I want to end on a good note. So we're going to go over the worst units and then the best units. Worst units, I've mostly already touched. Grey Hunters are absolutely unplayable garbage. You should be playing regular intercessors in every time in every way. Fenrisian Wolves are one of the like 2 data sheets that objectively got better, and I'm not sure that you want to play them because they're just not very good. I would rather spend 25 extra points ish to just get Scout Marines. They have OC already. They're still cheap. Why am I not doing that? Hell, for 15 more points, I'd rather just 15 or 20 more points. I'd rather just take a Tech Marine or an Iron Priest. Again, he's just easier to strategic reserves. He's better in every way. So Fenrisian Wolves are better than Index. I still don't think they're playable. And then Thundercav, because we're afraid of Wolf Prison, we lost all of our support in every way. Okay, Thunder Cav are kind of awful. I wish I could take them. I might still take them because fun theme and cool model, but trash. So then we go to best units. All right, Blood Claws. They got objectively worse. However, they are arguably one of our best data sheets in the whole codex. If you're playing Space Wolves, you should be playing Blood Claws. They are very good given the restrictions we have. Okay? They are one of the only, might be the only Space Marine unit that has a cap of 20. You want to hoard, you can totally hoard. The reason 20 is so impressive isn't because you get a bunch of models, because first off, they're more expensive than regular assault intercessors, and I'm going to argue deal less damage. Despite being angry wolves, just do less damage. But the reason they're so good is because when you take a 20 brick and add a character, like Ragnar, also an extremely good unit, you're taking the cost of that 90-point character and you're dividing it amongst 20 models. You are making that character way more points efficient for the amount of buffs that he's giving out. Blood Claws are great. Ragnar is amazing. Okay? I think he's the best character in our codex. I absolutely love him. Followed closely by the new Wolf Priest. New model, they pushed him hard. Who guessed? Wolf Priest is absolutely awesome. He is a chaplain, so he gives the +1 to wound. Boy, howdy, do I want that. And then he's also an apothecary, so he gets to bring a model back every turn. This is so good. Headhunters. They're the new unit. Of course, they're pushed. Also, they're pretty reasonable. Okay? They are, I would argue, if there weren't so many restrictions, I don't know if I'd take them. They're not that good. Given all the restrictions, top 3 unit. Okay, they're absolutely a must take as Space Wolves, because how else are you going to make these characters good? How else are you going to gain enough like targets for your stratagems? Because they're all restricted to Space Wolf units. You gotta take Headhunters. I'm going to tell you right now, I think the fact, so they have this weird rule where they mix, they call them hunting pack, but they're Fenrisian wolves on a different base. They're Fenrisian wolves that you can mix into the unit or have them be separate. I'm gonna tell you right now, they're a trap. You take Headhunters, you take more Headhunters. If you're going to take the hunting pack, you split them out and treat them as like, I bought Fenrisian wolves without taking up a data sheet, I guess. But you never leave them together, because in every instance, they are so soft. They're a free kill. They're not actually an extra like wound. You're not really protecting the Headhunters because they are so easy to kill. And then on top of that, you're making their footprint bigger. So you're probably just making them harder to hide. You're also increasing the number of models. So you're adding to their blast value. Never keep them together. Hopefully that'll change. Hopefully we get some updates. Again, across the board, I would love to see updates as far as like removing a lot of these restrictions, making them more playable. Hell, give Headhunters the ability to have generic characters like Blade Guard, because that's what they are. They are a Space Wolf version of Blade Guard. Why can I not put a generic lieutenant in there and give them lethal hits? Why can I not put a Judy? Holy cow, would I love a Judy so much. We need a giant FAQ to make this whole codex in line, not only with other Space Marine factions, but again, I like all of these restrictions are on top of the ones that we already have of we don't get the +1 to wound on oath. Absolutely why? Again, we're trying to end on a good note. So I do love some of these units. Headhunters look amazing. They're like the coolest model ever. Wolf Priest is hilariously good. Ragnar's amazing. Blood Claws have a good and relevant place. Also, if you believe the rumor engine, which I hate doing, mostly because they're like Reddit is wrong so often, there are a bunch of hints in this codex that sometime soon, soon TM, we could potentially getting our Primarch back. And that's gonna be awesome, right? First off, he's my favorite, right? But in addition to that, his model's gonna be so goddamn cool. It's rumor engine stuff. We have no idea when that's going to be. Obviously, a bunch of Primarchs are going to come back eventually, regardless. So it's not like, I don't know when it's going to be. Maybe it's this edition. Maybe it's this year. Maybe it's next edition. Maybe it's 10 years from now. But there's enough hints in here that it's likely sooner rather than later. But again, soon is a loose term. All right. So both good and bad, mostly bad, but a little bit of good. I've gone over a lot of things about this codex. I know no one has played against this new codex yet, but is there anything you guys have either played against on Index or have heard about that you want me to specifically cover that I haven't?
Yeah, Murder Fang.
Okay, so recently Sky was at a GT Midwest Conquest, and he got to go against the old Murder Fang in Index. Turns out old Murder Fang had some real restrictions, but he had a sweet ability. He got to fight multiple times. Every time he was attacked, he got to shoot or fight. This still exists in the game, though he lost it in this codex. Hellbrutes and World Eaters still have it. Hellbrutes have it in a better way, in like every way. First off, the Hellbrutes aren't unique, and the fact that Murder Fang is unique, named character, was a real restriction to him. It was easier for your opponent to focus him down because there's not a lot of ways to protect him. It was easier for them to focus him down and prevent the pinball from happening. World Eaters don't have that problem because they can spam 3 Hellbrutes and it's crazy. But it was very solid before. Now, he's lost that ability and he's gone down 10 points. That ain't enough. But he gained some other abilities. Maybe these will make up for it, right? He has 2 abilities. He can re-roll his advance and charge rolls. Charge roll feels good. He's a melee monster. The advance roll doesn't actually feel that great. It's not bad to have, but also there's not a lot of ways to give him advance and charge. So I don't know that it's actually all that relevant. His other ability is if he's within 6 of Wolfen specifically, he gives them 4-up fight on death. And only if they haven't already fought. So they never get to double fight.
Yep.
I hate it.
I am just blown away that the difference is 10 points. The new Murder Fang has none of that ability and is 10 points cheaper.
Yep. And
I would gladly pay 10 points on almost any unit to give it that ability.
Yes. And again, the argument is, like, was he undercosted before? Because that ability is crazy. I would argue he wasn't. At 170 with that ability, he was still rarely taken, even among Space Wolf players, because the answer is it was too hard to protect him getting across the field. And if he did get across the field, he could totally pinball and absolutely make up for his points, right? But there was only ever one of them. So it was fine. World Eaters get 3 of them, and then are effectively dealing the same amount of damage as he, the epic character. And then also they can much easier give a 6-up consolidate, which is the actual part that makes pinballing nuts. We're not talking about World Eaters necessarily, but also I also pray in the errata FAQ future that they restrict the 6-inch consolidate away from the Hellbrute because it's too much. But even then,
crazy.
It gets worse. Hellbrutes, they're not that different in price from Murderfang. And now he's 10 points cheaper, still not that different from a Hellbrute. And he is infinitely worse. Yeah, Murderfang has gone down the drain. But hey, you could give him lethal hits against vehicles, monsters, and characters, even though he's already designed to kill those and has twin linked.
It's so bad.
Anything else?
I don't know if my feelings can take anymore. I was so excited for this Codex release too. Like,
it's because we have sweet looking models, right? Like, we look so cool.
Yeah.
But this Codex does not support that cool look in any way.
It also hurts because they're so like in all the lore and books and stuff, and then in gameplay they're just like, nah.
Like, I'm not even gonna lie, I was super excited for this Codex because I was like, that means Chris is gonna get Space Wolves and I'm gonna get to fight against Space Wolves. And like, I've heard all these stories from other people, like they're really durable, they're really tough, and boy howdy, you better watch out for the swings from Murderfang. And I'm like, I'm ready for this. And this is just, I'm not even a Space Wolf player, nor was I gonna pick the army up to play, but this is disappointing to me as an opponent. I don't get to, like, this is a letdown. Like, I wanted to fight this. I was ready for this.
The last thing I want to say is specifically, they could do points changes. They could do all kinds of things. And I'm going to tell you right now, the only thing I want, I will be more expensive for absolutely no reason, despite being objectively worse. Okay. I am willing to accept that. The thing I want more than anything is to remove all of these restrictions. Because right now it's so easy for me to mathematically prove how objectively worse we are. If they removed all these restrictions and but I could put 12 different Space Marine characters with my blood claws. Do you know how much harder it'd be for me to say that they got worse? Because there's so many permutations of it's not clear. Yes, it might be true, but at least there's an era of doubt of maybe there's a combo I haven't thought of, or maybe there's this thing. There's so many restrictions. It's so easy and so obvious to objectively prove, via math. No, but look how much worse Grey Hunters are to regular intercessors. It's just, it's black and white. We need an errata FAQ to change the restrictions. That is what we need more than any amount of points change, more than any amount of mission deck change. None of that is going to make anywhere near the impact that a very simple changing the words Space Wolf to Adeptus Astartes could possibly fix.
Well, is there anything else anybody else wants to put in here?
Welcome to being a sort of crappy melee army.
Yay!
You know what? You're right. I will say, if you want these guys to be playable, I just have to pretend that they're actually orcs, and I spam enough blood claws that it looks like I'm playing Green Tide, and that might work. Horde is not in a great place right now, at least in America. So I'm not saying I'm going to win it all, but at least that might be a viable option casually.
What are blood claws? Like T4, 3-up armor?
Yep, 2 wounds. And they're a pistol and chainsword.
Okay, so
sorry, let me translate. They're Slugga Choppa.
2 wounds is a step up. However, do they have advance in charge or anything?
Yes. Specifically, that's part of why I think they're orcs. Is Blood Claw's rule is they get advanced in charge, so they get it all the time forever. But it is they have no damage buff in almost any way.
They're move 6, right?
Yes. No, actually, sorry. Correction. I think they're move 7.
Oh, so much better. I mean, it's still better, but it's not that crazy.
Yeah, they're move 7.
Yeah, I think they're good for the points. I mean, a 20 squad of boys is 210. I think it just went up to 220. But considering the double wounds and the saves, I think that for the wounds, you're getting a budget buy at 20 models.
Yep, and my 20 is 270.
So spam that. Spam it.
Yep.
Spam it.
But again, that seems very not good in the American meta, and also not what I would want to do with my historically elitist melee army. But also, you're right, is totally viable.
But think of how many blood claws you could buy. That's 120 blood claws.
I don't actually know that I could afford that many in my list. But also, you're right. That's like
I'm just saying,
kind of my only option.
I don't think that it's good. But also, they left the door wide open to Space Wolves are actually a Horde faction now.
Yep. And that's again, okay. I think, as I said before, it's one of like the only openings, because you do a Horde faction, you try to out OC them, and then you just die in droves, but also you die a little slower than they do because you have a bunch of dice or a bunch of models and they need more dice.
Yep.
Here's my high hopes dashed. We will all patiently await an errata.
So which codex is worse than this one? Imperial Agents?
Yep. That's probably like the only one. And to be fair, because its whole job was actually to be allied into other stuff, if you see it as an allying faction, which arguably wolves aren't that different, Imperial Agents aren't so bad. And we're probably on a similar footing. The minute you see it as a standalone codex, oof. You're right.
I mean, I would argue that the dogpile attachment is actually allying in to regular Astartes with no buffs.
Yeah.
And calling it a Space Wolves attachment.
Yep. Generically, the detachments. Okay. You know what? Let me say this. Here's what I think, and this is what I'm going to do. The best way to play wolves right this second is you can either play one of the Space Wolf detachments, probably the lethal hits against vehicles, monsters, and characters, and spam blood claws, or you play the Outrider detachment from the main book. You play mostly regular Astartes stuff, and then you splash in as like allies a couple of Space Wolf units. I am probably going to do the Outrider thing. I'm going to do the Outrider. I'm going to play mostly my generic Marine stuff. Because I'm playing a generic Marine detachment, I'll be able to target everybody. Everybody gets a benefit. And then I'll play just enough Space Wolf units to claim that I'm playing Space Wolves as a little bit of allied support. And that is the best option competitively in America right now.
Good luck.
All my hopes are in this basket.
I think GW might float that basket down the Nile, if you know what I mean.
Was that a Thousand Suns reference? Because I'll scream.
Oh, no. It's just, it'd be a shame if that basket that you put all your hopes in floated away to somewhere else.
All right. Well, as we mentioned earlier, this is a bit of a pre-recording. We're going to be doing a move of the physical store at the end of the month. So you'll still get this at your normal time. And we're trying to make sure that you continue to get your episode every week. But because we did a little pre-recording, we're not going to do a hobby time this time, because the last episode we did also covered the same time frame. And we will see you next week.
All right. Well, then, see you in the episode. Thank you all for listening. Tune in next week.
Hey, everybody. It's Aaron. I want to thank you again for tuning in for this episode of Gopher's Workshop with us, hanging out and listening. Remember, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. And if you feel like supporting us, you can always go to Patreon in the show notes below. Thanks. Till next time.